How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in place? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
Welcome to another edition of the Tactical Empire. Today I'm here with Sylvania Harrod. He is an entrepreneur and guerrilla marketer and a guy I have been following for a while and very intrigued with. And so I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. And this guy's a big personality and a huge brain. So we're going to learn some stuff today. Sylvania, thank you.
Jeff, man, I appreciate the time and kudos to you. I happen to live by this one thing, and I hope everybody gets the opportunity. It goes by the words of sua sponte.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of your own accord, of their own accord.
Yes,
and that is a good policy to live by.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of cool. So, I've always been a fan of Rangers. I've always been in more of a support element for when I was in the Army. I was a mental health specialist. And so I was right in Fort Lewis, Washington. So I'd see all the 275 guys run around with their Ranger panties on and be able to be there and just started building relationships with them. So anybody that I know that happens to have a Ranger background, I'll listen to literally anything they say.
Were you up there when it was Lewis still?
I was.
So me too, man.
Yeah. So I was there. I was at Lewis from 04 to 07.
Okay.
So I was there. My first son was born at Madigan Army Medical Center.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was part of the Stryker Brigade up there, and then I got moved over to Madigan, and so I was part of the mental health team that worked at Madigan. And so I would work on exercises, all different kinds of things, because they were like, you can fit in with these people. Because I like to believe I'm 52 cards short of a full deck. So going out, earning trust, being able to have conversations with them. I wasn't blessed with the physical giftedness, but I used my brain just to be able to help them be the best that they possibly could be.
Sure. I love that, man. Yeah, I was up there 2001 to 2004. So we were up there crossing paths, guaranteed.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing all of the the 160th guys when they moved the little detachment from Campbell up there and going around the airfield and watching them do exercises when I lived on post. And you see people hanging out, the little birds, and they're like flying around doing stuff. And I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever. There's so much badassery in that. So yeah, much credence to you.
Awesome, man. Well, tell me what you're doing now. You have created immense success in the civilian world, obviously.
Yes.
So you've built some pretty tremendous businesses and done some great things. Tell me more about what you do, what you've done since you got out of the military, and then kind of what you're doing now.
Perfect. So after I got out, so the unique thing I found when I got hurt and I got out back in 08 was in order to do what I was doing in the Army, of counseling people, I needed to go to school for a very long time. And before then, it was just, okay, you can do intakes. It's like, I've been counseling people for 5 years now. You want me to go back to pretty much just asking people questions on a form that you already figured out and there's no variance from it. So that led me down a path of okay, I read this book called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And when I watched that, when I read it, that's when I went, you know what? This is actually a little bit different. What's a career I can get myself into that is infinitely scalable depending on how hard I want to work and rewards me there? Because I knew working hourly wasn't going to work. So that's when I realized sales was going to be a possibility. And I looked at, okay, what type of sales to get into? What kind of things do I like? And that's when I ventured into technology sales back after I got out. I was working at a gym, seeing these guys come in and out. I'm a car guy. I saw nice cars going by and I said, what do you guys do? And they're like, we work in technology sales. So I said, perfect. You guys hiring? Because I know this gym stuff isn't going to be for me for life. And that's when I started in tech sales. So I've been doing that soon to be 16 years there. But I've also had this other element of me that always likes to create something new. So while I appreciate structures and I appreciate process, I also like creating something new. So I've dabbled with multiple different things over the last 10 years or so. And the thing that really took off for me was what I coined guerrilla affiliate marketing. When you look at affiliate marketing is a model where you go ahead and you refer people to utilize a tool or service based upon whatever audience you're speaking to. So I've
Mhm.
seen lots of people get rewarded for that, where they're making $10,000 a month just by referring people to a particular platform. Well, I've also liked guerrilla marketing because I don't like being conventional. I don't like just walking up to a bunch of strangers and being like, hey, guess what? I have this really cool tool. You should be able to use this. So I looked at it and said, is there a way I can marry the two? And I'm a firm believer that everything you're looking for, you already have access to. It's like walking around the house looking for your sunglasses when they're in your head the entire time. I looked at it and said, how does this model work in real life? And I realized that in the technology sales world, most business is done by what they call resellers. And resellers all report to what's called a distributor. So this distributor gets direct contracts with manufacturers, and then they take a percentage of that and pass it down to people that are resellers. And I looked at that and I said, huh, that's quite interesting. And then it got even better because at the time I was in college and there was a guy by the name of PJ. And so PJ was a DC firefighter. He was also a jarhead. So I always like to bring him like broken crayons and stuff like that to be like, hey, you know. And so PJ, his buddy that he grew up with, went ahead and became extremely wealthy, was a partner with him. I was like, PJ, what does your buddy do? He came out to lunch one day. He's like, well, when he was back in college, he got an internship working for a local trash company. He said most trash companies, what they end up doing is they like get contracts with certain neighborhoods, and most trash is not picked up by cities or public works departments. It's hosted by a third party. I said, oh, okay. So his summer, he went on this internship. He goes through, and as he goes through that internship, the guy said he sold more things in a 6-week process than anybody had ever done in the history of the guy's 10 years company. So he takes him to the local car dealership. That was Mercedes. Said, buy any Mercedes you want on the lot for as a bonus to give him back to him. He said, I'm not really a car guy, but if you can teach me the workings of the business, that would be way more important than you buy me a $200,000 car. Luckily that wasn't me because I would have had a $200,000 car, but that's a whole nother story. So he goes, he learns the business over the next couple of years. He then gets to a place where he realizes that the person who negotiates the contract is the one who can reap the rewards. He doesn't actually like deliver any of, they don't own any trash trucks. They don't own any of those things. Only thing they do is they just find out ways to negotiate the contract. So he started this process. It built and built and built to the point where Waste Management flew him down, said, you're going to sign a check. Like, we're going to sign a check to you before you leave here because we're going to buy your company. And he sold it for $40 million.
Mm.
And it was that moment that he was like, oh, so what people really want is something that cannibalizes time. Like, if it can remove time and it's just simple and easy, they don't have to think about it. That's what these big companies really want. So that led me to, I really liked associating and hanging out with these people in the internet marketing space. These guys were great. They build courses. They pretty much go out and change people's lives. The reality was, I didn't want to spend all my time building courses. I
Yeah.
didn't really want to spend all my time running all these webinars and all these other kind of things because unfortunately, I just didn't have time for it.
Yeah.
So that period of time forced me to think differently. And so I looked at like, these are the customers I'm serving. This is what I'm doing. So in that moment, it's when I realized, why don't I just marry the two and find a way to create more of like a distribution model where I go talk to these companies that everybody's using. And if I do that, the company is going to pay me a piece, as well as the people are going to pay me a piece of membership. And I'm going to have that there. So the only thing I'm really doing is just connecting the two. And
Okay.
so I started that about 5 years ago. We now have 3,700 customers all around the globe. Where revenue has always been between 70 and 80K per month that happens to come across. And I don't work more than 4 hours a week because most of it was like, hey, make sure it's working, make sure the relationships are happening there. And I ended up getting sick in 2019. And the beautiful thing is the business grew double year over year.
Yeah.
It just kept growing and growing and growing. And I realized like, I don't have to show up. I don't have to talk about anything. I don't have to do anything because my VA, my process started working so well. And so this grew into like, okay, like what if I can build the same model for other people that already
Mhm.
have audiences and they don't know how to like build a culture of buyers as well as create strategic partnerships where they already exist. And this has led to a couple other companies that I now have equity within, that are grossing millions of dollars year over year. And the only thing they pay me is whatever I grow that company. And so
Huh.
it's not relying on my time, which I'm a firm believer any entrepreneur only really wants one thing: time freedom. Because I've met plenty of people who have lots of money,
Yeah.
but they're tied to that desk, they're tied to that physical location, and they can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Or they don't have the skills to train people underneath them to take over that business. So when people give them an influx of cash to buy their business, then it's like, oh, what I really actually wanted was time freedom.
Yeah.
So my philosophy is build the time freedom. And if that's really what you want, work backwards
On the
and make
front end.
sure whatever you're building on the front end supports time freedom.
Yeah.
And through equity partnerships and guerrilla affiliate marketing, it's truly the only way that it's effective, that you can be able to do that. Because I've seen this happen time and time again. You have people that go ahead and I like to use a Kardashian because they're so polarizing, right? You
Yeah.
look at Kylie Jenner. Why is Kylie Jenner a billionaire? Does she own a makeup company? No.
No.
Does she know anything about makeup? Probably
Some.
not. Like she
A
probably has
little.
no idea how it's. She may know a little bit, but is she in the chemical factory mixing
Mm-mm.
these compounds,
No.
sourcing these
She's an end user.
that's it. And so what she did was she went and she said, "Well, I'm already using this stuff to be able to be here. I know the total addressable market for beauty products is infinite. Because no matter
Yes.
what, even if the economy goes down, people still want to look pretty when they have to show up. So the real people who manufacture and do everything put two and two together. And so she's been able to build this empire based on doing nothing but just utilizing her time.
Sure. So w- primarily, do you do this in the tech space? So are you marrying a platform with an end user? Is that how
Yeah.
you're doing it?
Look at the most profitable companies in the world. One of the things when I realized that software is 90% profit
Sure.
after it's developed and after
Yeah.
it's there, the beautiful thing about software is that if you can't negotiate where there's no profit,
Hmm.
because it's very hard. If it's a very low margin business, it's like trying to squeeze a lemon, hopefully hoping that you're going to get lemonade, right?
Yeah, of
Like
course.
there's only so much you can get out of it. But software is so profitable because the only thing is that people readily use it. We're in a world of technology that everybody's using software. They're going to have to use software. Everything we do to connect as humanity is based on software. So I looked at it and said, if I'm going to create equity partnerships, there's two categories. There has to be some type of software, or it has to be some type of information-based product that utilizes software because
Yeah.
there has to be profit because it's not going to work
There
otherwise.
there's tons of leverage in the negotiation process too. I worked
Yeah.
at a Fortune 50 company
Yeah.
in IT, and
Yep.
we negotiated with Oracle and Siebel,
Yes.
and we had these big multi-million dollar,
Mhm.
eight-figure negotiations on license agreements.
Yes.
And when you think about that, now this is all resonating with me. I was young and dumb and fucking didn't care about any of that
Yeah.
stuff when it was going on. But like now
Yeah.
I'm like, huh, okay. Well, they had like 99% margins. And so we were
Yeah.
just trying to meet somewhere in the middle on the
Exactly.
delta of how much profit they were going to make and how much we were going to squeeze out of them on the license agreement.
Exactly. If we went to the Fortune 100 and just started going through the list, look at how many people have some type of software associated with them.
Tons.
Tons of
All
them.
of them.
Why?
Yeah.
Just like other than the guy I want to call him Bernard Arnault, who happens to build these other equity partnerships with the Kylie Jenners of the world
Yeah.
and Rihanna, to like luxury brands. Everybody else is software. Software investing, you can do Warren Buffett, but Warren Buffett buys his company. Like software happens to be there. So if you can identify these software, people are always going to use software.
Yeah.
It's never going away. It's only going to
Smart, man.
make life easier. And so because there's so much margin in these, if you can create those, it's easier to scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes tremendous sense.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Thanks, man. I mean, it was just something that I'm just there, and it happens to go like, oh, cool. Like
Well,
it just it's so I was on a call prior to here, and the company was like, we're going through different information. They're talking about like, if we get to 10 million users, we'll be able to have this type of exit, and we're talking about exits with a B.
yeah.
Like big time exits with a B that you're able to get into and have those discussions. And you can only have B type conversation if you can use something that pretty much anybody has the ability to be able to use.
Yeah.
And so those are the type of discussions that really help build your empire.
It's amazing. It's amazing,
Yeah,
dude.
bro.
Like, oh man. So tell me, let's take it from billions down
Yeah.
to mid-sized small businesses,
Mhm.
and um you have a ton of experience, 15 years experience in this stuff.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
sure you have an eye for opportunity, because you just
absolutely.
explained to me how you found a gap in the marketplace and then fucking
Mhm.
built a monster
Mhm.
within
Yeah.
it, which
Yeah.
is what I love. I mean, like,
Mhm.
that is entrepreneurialism at its
Mhm.
finest right there.
Yeah.
And so what do you see as emerging markets, not necessarily emerging markets as much as like
Mhm.
emerging opportunities? And like, what do you like in the next 5 years?
Um, so you're gonna think I'm biased, but I'm gonna say software.
Okay.
Um,
That's
and
fine.
why I see that there's one thing that I'm actively working on right now with any of these companies that I try to consult is making sure that you're building a white label entity to it. I watched this happen with this one company called High Level. I've known Sean. I met Sean like 6 years ago, like way back in the day when he was just getting started out in his little Denver networking group to be able to go there. And he was telling me kind of the process, and we've talked a few times since then. But what really took them off and really created this massive valuation for them was when they created the white label version of what they were
Yep.
doing. And so what it ended up doing is most businesses that when you go into, their problem that they have is cash flow. So like when they go in, and cash flow is normally tied to, or maybe it's this, like let's say it's a service-based business. And let's say you're a web designer. Well, most web designers, most of their problem is that they'll get a large chunk that influxes into their account when they take on the deposit for that project. Then they go through all the workings and all the scope creep, and then they're going to get to a place where they finally get the last bid, like once monies and everything go out the door, and they get it, and they get an influx of cash, and great. Well, what they don't have is recurring revenue.
Yeah.
Monthly recurring revenue is king, because if we
Yes.
if we look at all the models that even automobile companies are trying to go to, they're all trying to establish some type of monthly recurring revenue that is predictable, that they can understand. That's why streaming and all these services, everybody wants to have some type of MRR business going on.
Yes.
So MRR is incredible, because why? Especially when you get to volume, you can, it doesn't matter. It's having a magic FU button when it comes to certain customers. Because you're like, oh, I don't have to wait for this massive capital influx to come when I already know this is how much is coming in and it's predictable.
Yep.
So looking at that piece, that web design company, now imagine if they had an MRR they can offer to their customers that they could be able to build, that they could be able to say, you know what, these bookings are here. So while these capital increases are great, knowing that I can have 100, 200, 300 customers that are paying me for a service that they already want anyway. And something like, let's just use High Level, for example. They've already built kind of the CRM and backend for people to help support. And all I got to do is just move them from this point to this point. And even if they fire me as a web design company, they're more than likely going to keep that subscription. It ain't
Yep.
going nowhere. They're going to, the more it gets intertwined, from tech, the
Yes.
more like just technical debt you have when it comes to certain items, the unlikelihood of you removing that item. So I look in tech as in like databases. Databases don't change. You may create a new database for a different application,
Yep.
but there's a reason why Larry Ellison of Oracle is like the fourth richest guy in the world, is because he knows databases are sticky, they're not going anywhere. So if there's tools that can collaborate information of like customer data over time, those are never going anywhere.
Yeah.
So if you can build, so that's why I look at like monthly recurring revenue is king. and having that, because it just builds this confidence of this magical FU button that your business isn't being made on decisions of like, man, we got to hunt and hunt and hunt and get this big thing.
Yeah.
It's we know it's here, so now we can hunt on bigger whales that we want to take down because we know monthly recurring revenue is there.
It's interesting that you say that, because just last week, I think I was watching something, because we use high level for the Tactical Empire now, and we're
Yeah.
moving over to it.
Mhm.
And but as you spoke, it made me think of a video I saw last week, which is that millionaires build things for the end user, and I think it was $1 billion companies
Yes.
build the platform for
Yes.
millionaires. And
Yes.
like when you
100%.
said that, that was
Mhm.
spot on. It was
Mhm.
resonating with me, because I'm like, fuck, man, go high level. If you think about it, how many opportunities for $1 million businesses to multi-million dollar businesses, 7, 8 figure businesses,
Mhm.
are on high level,
Exactly.
and have they created? And so they should get
Mhm.
the desserts of that,
Mhm.
that $1 billion valuation, or whatever it
Mhm.
is at this point. I have no idea what they're valued for, but it's going to be
It's
billions.
definitely gonna be billions with a B,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
for sure.
that's a different level of fuck you money. Like,
Yeah.
when you're talking about Bs, like, that's a totally different game, and platform as a service, so in the category, it's called most people think of SaaS, which is software as a service, which is a tool
Yes.
you use. Platform as a service is PaaS. It's even larger total addressable market because PaaS is things like Salesforce, LinkedIn, Facebook. These are
Yes.
things that you can build on top of. And
Yes.
so if you can go in, like, I just think of it, most people are lazy. Like, they don't want to do the heavy lifting of the work, or find the people that actually know how to do that. So what they'll do is, like, whatever's the easiest tool to be able to use, they'll go and do that. The billionaires are thinking about what platform I want to create based on, like, building some of the pain points that are associated there. So there's a reason why a TikTok can be a multi-billion-dollar company. Why?
Yeah.
It's simple to use. You go in, you click, you put things on there, and I'm building my business because of that thing. It's the
Yes.
same reason if you look at the valuations of network marketing companies. It's the
Mhm.
same thing. Like, if you
Yeah.
create opportunities for the people to make M's, you're going to make B's because
Yeah.
they're going to consistently drive and build stuff there.
That's such an interesting concept, and a way to stretch and rewire the way you think about things. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, because the examples I think in the video I saw were like Amazon and Facebook. Like, how many
Yeah.
millionaires have been created off of Facebook? But to your point, TikTok, YouTube is the same way.
Same way.
Um, yeah, fascinating,
It's a
fascinating.
different that's a different game. And so with a different game, you're gonna run into legislation, you're gonna run into, like, legal. There's a lot of legalese that you're gonna run into,
Sure.
but that's a totally different market. But now here's the key. Let's say you're making M's and you want to help them make B's. You can get equity partnerships if you find the right things. You can find these opportunities, just like the conversation I was just having, where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you can find those opportunities based on your zone of genius, and it all has to work back to, I look at kind of like the foundational of, like, there's a few questions I typically ask people, like, um, any type of dreaming or any type of vision planning you have, like, what do you want? Who are you doing with? How are you monitoring? Where do you live? How are you monitoring your time? Because for me, in this current phase of life, time is the most critical thing. My
Sure.
oldest is 17, my youngest is 5.
Yeah.
So when I look at my 17-year-old, I have one of 2 birthdays left.
Yeah.
When they want to engage before they leave the nest and they go out and do stuff. My 3 younger ones are all girls. So it's like, hey, I only have so many Fridays that are left to take them out on a date so that they can understand and I can build the foundational blueprint of how not to marry a D-bag.
Yeah.
Like, it's because, like, daddy cared for me. My daddy did this. My daddy did this. That'll be the biggest gift I could ever have, is her saying to some poor schmuck that, like, oh no, my daddy's already taken me to Paris. I don't really want to go to Paris. Like, because they're not impressed with all the
Yeah.
things that most kids would be impressed by. Because, like, yeah, my daddy flies private. My daddy flies
Yeah.
these kind of things. Like, that's the reality I look at. So, and I also look at, like, I actually really love my wife. So I want to engage and spend time with my wife. So those B type conversations for me, as far as building that platform is not something that I want to do right now.
Yep.
Now, if the kids move out the house and I got nothing better to do, then I'm just gonna flex that muscle and be like, all right, let's get some more B's. I'll take large M exits. And then if I get to the point where it's like I want to do B's, I'll do B's. But it's all based like that's the crazy part of like that mindset is that it's infinitely scalable. You just dial it up and dial it down based upon what drives you at that moment and
Yeah,
be able to be there.
it's seasons of life, man.
Oh
You
yeah.
and I are in so much alignment on this, like, because
Yeah.
I talk to people about this all the time, and I'm like, my youngest daughter's 4, and so,
Hmm.
like, I subscribe to the same train of thought. I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna continue to make money, I'm gonna
Hmm.
continue to build wealth,
Hmm.
but I'm gonna do it with, like, really hard boundaries
Oh yeah.
on what we're doing. So,
Hmm.
like, what we say yes and no to is based on your freedom quotient on,
Hmm.
like, time freedom and
Yeah.
freedom of location,
Yeah.
because we've got tops 14 years with our kids, and I'm
Hmm.
of the same mindset. I'm like, man, my kids are going to leave, I'm going to be 50 something years old, I've got fucking 20, 30 more years, and
Yeah.
it's going to be like, unleash me, I'm going to
Oh
create
yeah.
tons of shit in those 30 years. Like, it will pale in comparison to my first 30 years when I was young and stupid and making all
Yeah.
kinds of dumbass mistakes. Like,
Oh yeah.
start me with money and a little more maturity and a little patience, and, like, now I'm a whole new man.
Exactly. So the crazy part is I did the math. I'll be turning 50. Like I'll be right at 50 when my youngest gets out of the house. And then I looked at that and I said, can you imagine? Just think about all the like most CEOs of like Fortune 100 companies are in their 50s, unless they go to a weird tech startup, or they're in
Yeah.
their 60s. So like the highest income earning years of my life are way ahead of me.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it and said, well, why don't I just build a foundation of like love and connection and enablement and understanding the kids happen to be there, spending time with my wife as we get older, we take care of ourselves physically and doing that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then when the kids leave the nest, then it's like, all right, great. Do you where do you want to be? Like, what do you want to? My wife doesn't want it. She's the perfect wife. She's not driven about anything other than exercise. So she's
Yeah.
like, as long as I can exercise and I have all my tools around me, I don't need anything else. And that's where I go, perfect. Well, guess what we're gonna do? You better be prepared to be on a plane. We can do these meetings, we can have these late conversations, we can build those different pieces, and we can have fun doing that shit all the time. So
Yeah.
right now the phase is like, all right, there's a small chunk of hours. How can I be as effective as possible in those small chunk of hours? Because in an hour, the kids are going to be home. They're going to want snacks. They're going to want other things, and I got to turn into dad mode. Got to clean the house. I got to do other things. So, like all that fun stuff is really where I got to go. So it makes it a lot of fun.
I love that, man. I
Yeah.
love that. And to be honest, like, I think this is where I lost my way in our first probably 6 years of
Mhm.
having kids. Like our
Mhm.
oldest kid, like,
Yeah.
I was still on, like, that. I was chasing money and, like,
Oh
trying to
yeah.
focus, and I was stupid in business and didn't really understand what I was doing, and I was just make it happen through, like, sheer will and determination. Um,
Hmm.
and but then when I kind of took a step back and realized that, like, I was missing out on all those things, because ultimately, what's it matter? Like, if you go get 1 billion right now, but you're
Hmm.
not home for the next 5 years, but it takes you that money, like, does it really matter? Like, your quality of life quotient is, like,
Hmm.
very, like, once you have taking care of, like, the hierarchy of needs, and,
Yeah.
like, you guys are safe, you can
Yeah.
eat, you're comfortable, you're flying private, you're beyond where you really need to be, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, the time to dollars
Hmm.
quotient is not out of alignment, and so, like, it really is refreshing to see you have, like, so much priority on your family. Like, that's,
Yeah.
I think that's super important. I wish more men did that,
Hmm.
and I think that a lot of it, I don't know what the reason for me doing that
Hmm.
was, as far, well, I know what made me pull my head out of my ass, like, I about
Hmm.
burn it all down, and then I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I about ruined my entire life and marriage
Mhm.
and everything else, and, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." Like, "Huh, wake up call. Here we
Yeah.
go."
That didn't work so well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll tell you what it was for me is I mentioned it before. 2019, I ended up getting sick.
Okay.
And I was actually, so I was the guy that people referred to as the runaway freight train. What I would do is I had like a coaching practice. So in the mornings, what I did for like 4 years was like, I woke up at 5:30. I would get in the car at 6, drive to the office. It took me about an hour to get there. So from 6 to 8, I had 2 different coaching calls. I would then work 8 to 5. Um, then from I would drive home. It took me an hour 15 to get home. Then I would see the kids. Like my youngest was just a little baby at that time, so there's not really much you do. You're like, hey, like relieve the wife a little
Yeah.
bit for a few hours, but it's like I gotta go build my empire. So, blah. And so I would be on calls to like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, sometimes 1 in the morning, talking to people, networking, doing all this kind of stuff. And so I did that for like 4 years, where I would like I have calls, my sleep patterns were all over the place. Weekends, I was just heads down. I'm reading, I'm consuming everything I could possibly be. And then we made a decision when my youngest was born that we were going to move to Denver, Colorado. So I moved to Denver, Colorado, and I had covered Denver and Arizona was where my customers were. So I was constantly flying, and then once every 2 weeks for 2 weeks, I would come home. So I'm like on flights constantly, all the jet setting lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm not exercising. I'm eating whatever I can possibly get in front of me. And then and then we're trying to sell a house. My wife's there with small kids. All this stuff comes to a head when I was as I was flying, whenever I got to sea level, I felt fine. But come it was Easter of 2019, I land in Baltimore. I get there and the feeling doesn't go away. And I'm like, man, this is getting kind of bad. And so it started getting worse and worse to where I started having problems thinking, problem understanding. I go to the ER. They're like, we don't know what's going on, but my suggestion would be like, this seems like something that's in the brain. You may want to go back to Denver where you're living, where the symptoms are primarily there. And I had something called high altitude cerebral edema. What
Uh,
that typically is somebody who goes up, and normally at 5,000 feet elevation, you don't get hit with it. It's normally people who go up to like they're climbing Mount Picchu and
yep.
10,000 and things start swelling and they don't understand what's happening. They start losing cognitive ability. You bring them down to sea level and they're fine. Well, something wired in my brain where it just didn't happen. And then all of a sudden, it started triggering, and I spent the next 18 months trying to figure out what was wrong because we get to the place where they're like, I'm at cancer places. I've saw over 75 different doctors. Nobody knows what's going on. I moved back to the East Coast. And as I'm there, I remembered a conversation I had with a friend when I first started this journey because her sister had Lyme disease. So I was like, let me find a naturopath and see if that happens to be it. And it was. But I had such a rare case that the number one doctor for handling that in the US was in Washington, D.C., where I moved back to. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's start treatments. Let's start regimens. Let's figure out what's going on. COVID happens. So everything is locked down.
Yeah.
So it was COVID was the best thing that could ever happen to me because at that time for work, I was driving like 1,000 miles a week. I'm driving all around to be able to do stuff because I was so used to chaos was normal to me. Like
Yeah.
if things weren't chaos and things were calm or quiet, naturally person development wants to tell you you're not growing, you're not pushing hard enough. You know that all that kind of bullshit that happens to be out there where it's like just run yourself till you go off a cliff, pick yourself back up with all broken and bruised, and then run yourself off again and see how far you can
Yep.
go. And I just realized like it took me like 3 months because I was the guy who hated vacations
Yep.
because it's like I'm not working, I'm not doing anything. Like it would take me, we would have to go 7 days minimum because it would take me 3 days to actually adjust to doing nothing.
Calm down. Calm down. Yep.
And to calm down my nervous system. So here I am, doing nothing but just causing chaos to my nervous system. And
Yep.
that was what felt normal to me.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I had to pause and stop and reassess everything in life. When you're sitting there and they think that they may have to like you have lesions on your brain and they're talking about possibly like doing brain surgery. I'm like, man, you ain't touching my brain. Like, you want to do
Yeah.
what? And I do not wish a spinal tap on any living human being, especially like I understand what it means when you strike a nerve because
Yeah.
they hit my nerve 3 times and your entire body feels like it wants to catapult out of there.
Oh,
And just the amount of pain that was associated with it. that I had
Sure.
to rewire and prioritize like what I cared for me.
Yeah.
And I've actually been quiet the last 4 years, up until September of this year when I went, and I remember I was on a conversation and I said, all right, it's time. Um, but this time I'm going to do it different. I'm going to make sure that I'm prioritizing my health. I'm making
Yeah.
sure I'm not working the weekends. I'm not doing that. Because guess what? People think that they have to respond to people so quickly.
Yeah.
It's BS. Like if you go ahead and you have an issue with Amazon, guess what? It's turning off on Friday. It ain't coming back on until Monday. No matter what's going on. And you can talk to customer support and all these other kind of things on, but your account team isn't coming back till Monday.
Yep.
They're not going to be there. And through all those things, I realized one, who's most important in my life, who showed up. Because I look at it, it's like it's the people that are around you when things are going well are not the people that really matter. Nothing really happens until you're tested and things go bad. That's
Yep.
when your personal true colors show, and also the relationships that matter in life actually show. And that was when my wife went in harder. Because can you imagine? Like, there's nothing worse than me than seeing my wife sick,
Yeah.
because like I don't want her to feel sick. I don't want her to feel bad. And most of the stuff, it's like she has a cold, she has the flu, she has the Rona. You know what I mean? But to go ahead and be like, I don't even know what's wrong with her. And every single day, that's like your experience, and you're managing young infant kids. Oh
Yeah.
my God. And so to be able to go through that experience, to go there, it actually grew our marriage, because it was like no test, no testimony. And that's
Sure.
why I've prioritized that element, because I got the gift of understanding my mortality in my early 30s,
Yeah.
versus most people have this because they have a heart attack in their 50s, because they were like, I gotta like I'm built different and all that other kind of bullshit they feed themselves. No.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like at the end of like, what's wrong with actually enjoying your wife? What's wrong with enjoying the PTO meetings? Because you've just been trained to run in chaos becoming normal. When once that's gone, it's so much easier to think clearly, to value yourself, to understand the importance of what you're doing. And that's why I'm so driven to build the things I do and get out there, because that's just me. That's what happened. And that was my reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's such a refreshing story to hear from someone else's perspective, because like
Mhm.
every single thing you say is so relatable. Like
Mhm.
I'm a long time recovering chaos chaser, for sure, for
Uh-huh.
sure.
Yeah.
And when it didn't exist, I made it, and even when I didn't have to. And
Yeah.
but I'll tell you what, when I went backwards and I focused on like foundationally building what I
Mhm.
truly wanted, everything came easier. I broke through every financial barrier,
Mhm.
every like the money comes easier, the
Mhm.
work is easier. It's really just that much more fulfilling. So what you're saying is absolutely true. Um, I think it's hard to come to terms with for some people,
Mhm.
just because they don't trust themselves. Like when you slow down, it feels
Mhm.
risky,
Oh
right?
yeah.
'Cause you're like, "Fuck, man, I'm bound to all these bills. I'm bound
Yeah.
to all these things I took on,
Yeah.
and, whether it was a good decision or not, it's my decision, and here we are." And
Yeah.
so, like, how do I take my foot off the gas and
Mhm.
trust the process is going to work out in a way that's either better or e even more fulfilling than what I'm doing? But, like, the thing was during that period of time, I wasn't fulfilled at all in any aspect of
Exactly.
life, really. I was just
Mhm.
hiding in kind of what I knew how to do, and
Yeah.
working is what I knew how to do. So, like,
Exactly.
I didn't know how to be a dad, I didn't know how to be a husband, I didn't know how to be emotional or
Mhm.
in touch with my shit or leave my
Mhm.
ego at the door. So I was
Yeah.
just like, "Well, I'll just work more, and
Yeah.
I'll run faster." And,
Mhm.
that doesn't work out as you
N No. No, it
as
doesn't.
you
And I
said.
think, bro, the beautiful thing about all of what you just mentioned was, um, I have a mentor that's in my life that helped me understand that there's more emotions than excited and "fuck you." That like there's a spectrum. There's a spectrum of things that happen to be there. And so through those different moments, because I was raised by I wasn't raised in an environment where like people were loving and caring,
Yeah,
in what I think of as loving and caring, where I mean like hugging, like physical touch, giving
yeah,
you a kiss, like wanting to do that. And so their definition was different because my parents were raised during Jim Crow. Like that was a totally different element as a black man. Like they were raised in Jim Crow. Like you couldn't show those things.
Right.
Well, the cool thing about it is that my generation has the ability to impart that, where it's like we can take the seriousness and the drive and the desire to want to do something different, but I don't have to do it in a way that is so like dehumanizing, because you had to be a robot, otherwise you can't get anything done. You study
Yeah.
anybody that's grown up in a very traumatic type situation, stoic, like you have to like turn it off. Like you can't listen to that, because if you won't do anything, you won't accomplish anything. You got to get very archaic to get to where you need to do to get out and get to the place. But once your human needs are met, then there's a skill of embracing your humanity and embracing your flaws and being able to, I quoted it this morning where I said, it reminds me of like Blade Trinity, where you had Wesley Snipes, he's talking to Jessica Biel, and her dad just died, and he's like, use it. Like at that moment, use it. So in those traumatic situations, it's great. But the fun fact is most of us are not running in a traumatic situation. Like we have a roof over our heads, even though like money to me is the end of the equation. Like it's an energy. So it's like it comes in, goes out, comes in, it goes out. But the nest behind can always grow. Like if you build the right structures and processes.
Sure.
So many people get stuck at the end of the equation where they're like, but how can I possibly be happy if I'm broke? I said, it's very simple. It's a choice.
Yeah.
If you believe something outside of you is going to create a completely different reality of you, you're mistaken. And it will crush you, because if you're lonely and miserable, you'll just be lonely, miserable in a bigger castle. And then you'll find ways to do that, because your blueprint tells you like this is normal. And unless you're around people that have completely different, most people, like when they were like, are you really happy? I was like, hell yeah. I'm a damn clown, like Homie the Clown, because I don't play that in some things. You know what I mean? But like you can actually be happy. You can actually be fulfilled. And I don't need any of this shit. It could all burn to the ground tomorrow. But I know that there's people that I can talk to, that I can go and I can be able to be there and realize it's an internal journey. The only difference is it won't burn down. Why? Because my energy is only going to attract in what I allow to. So if I just focus on that piece, all of a sudden, no matter what's happening in the macro, it's already going to be created.
Yeah.
And I just focus there. That's where I spend my time. And it's so much easier to like be like, hey, yeah, I'm not all warm and fuzzy all the time. I will definitely kick my kids in the ass if I need to. My wife would be like, you should cuddle more. It's like, this is a spectrum, right? This is a spectrum. You want cuddles all the time. If I cuddle all the time, we ain't leaving the room. We ain't going nowhere. You're probably gonna be sore and tired, because that's what's wired there. So be good. But like there's a spectrum that I'm growing on. So yeah.
I love that, man. And that's such a good perspective. And people don't understand that, because they get inundated with the inputs that we have access to. It keeps us so busy and blinded to our potential and our future and everything else. And like people don't understand why they get stuck. And it's because they don't plug their own holes. And I mean, that's where I was at. I was like, I was like, I'm gonna singularly, really narrowly focus on my skill sets, and I'm gonna be out here like a piece of Swiss cheese with all these holes in my game perfectly, thinking that no water would leak out of the bucket. And that's what, I mean, I've seen it time and again. I've seen people make a lot of money and lose a lot of money. I've seen people make a lot of money and be very unhappy. And like, I didn't reach the level of success that I wanted to at all. I mean, I'm still not there at all, but like, I didn't even head on the trajectory, I really feel like, until I started going and doing the work on myself.
Yeah. It's a beautiful gift. And so I was thinking of the book by Jim Collins, Good to Great, right? And he talks about a level 5 leader. Most people are in level 4, where even doesn't matter what the business is doing. Level 4, if we look at level 4 in life, it's like, hey, we're accomplishing a lot of things. The reality is that you're in 1% of the entire population of the world. Right? Like you're already there. Anybody would come to you, Jeff, and would trade shoes with you immediately, given the opportunity. They would go and want to be able to do it. So it's like, I think of like, if you go ahead and you purchase something from Amazon, you know it's going to be delivered. Did you already buy it? Yeah. So
Yeah.
whatever you set your mind towards of like, hey, this is the amount of wealth that's going to be in my family when I close my eyes, it's already there. So
Yep.
that's already there. Then I'm not the logistics company. My job isn't to go ahead and be like, well, who's delivering it? What day are they delivering it? When are they going to deliver it by? And then spend the next hour just refreshing the screen to see when the package hasn't moved, who's in control of it. That's where most people get lost. They're like, I don't need to refresh the screen, figure out what's happening. That already exists. So that's there. The only thing I can do is just like when it shows up, it shows up. So when I look at level five is all about community.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the
Purpose.
piece that I found is that if you have community and mission, like if your mission is I'm going to go out and I'm going to build wealth for my family. Well, guess what? You've made a declaration. This is where you're going. Same thing can happen with culture inside of a business. Like of my culture, when I look at it, it's like, look, I call my people my apes. They're like, why? Like you look at a gorilla, most people love lions. They're fascinated about lions. Lions are such lazy piece of shit. They don't do
Yeah.
nothing most of the day until it's like, oh, I'm going to go hunt. I'm going to go do something. But they seem so sexy. Where gorillas are all about building community.
Yep.
So gorillas will create their own troop and they'll have people, whether they're in the mountain, like more like me, because I'm a mountain gorilla. And then they have a silverback. So the silverback's job is to direct the culture of where things are going. But the silverback's job is also to raise other silverbacks. So they can go ahead
Yes.
and build their own troops. Because what happens is, especially in business, is that it's a fallacy where people don't think that they should be collaborating with other people. Where they're like, oh no, I got to be the person. I got to be the person who plants my flag. Guess what? If you look at any real successful business, depending on what scale of success you want to look at, that has sustained time. So I mean a minimum of 20 years. It has to evolve, it has to change, and it can only do that by having other silverbacks that it can align with. And
Yep.
so when I look at my mission of like, hey, my whole adventure in life is to do nothing but just if I can just fire one light bulb in every person I talk to, Sylvania light bulb, and that turns on, I've done my job. Because if you can ignite the light bulb in that person to where they think something similar, like just a little bit different, maybe their interaction with me because of my like there's this thing called mirror neurons. So when we
Yep.
engage with people, we're not actually engaging with them. We're engaging with their mirror neurons. So it's amazing when you meet a person that holds peace. Because when you go around them, especially if you've been angry your entire life, you're like, I don't know what it is. That person is just different than me.
Yep.
But if that person walks in a room and they talk and they speak, all of a sudden you're like, I don't know what it is about that person. It's because we're not engaging. Like it's just our mirror neurons firing. So if my mirror neurons are dialed in to where I can engage with somebody and I can give them access to just accept themselves, why? Because that's what I'm doing myself. Like it's
Right.
nothing but a journey of acceptance. I talk about dating yourself all the time, where it's like, hey, date yourself. What do you actually like? What do you actually enjoy doing? Like, I love nothing more than engaging like this. Like, especially even in person is even better. Time is
Yeah.
typically limited. So, like, how can you engage those things? Some
Sure.
people despise this. Perfect. Be a writer. You don't have to do anything. You can go be a ghostwriter. John Maxwell's written numerous books. Most people don't actually know who his ghostwriter is. John Maxwell doesn't write them. He creates the ideas, the concepts, the different things. They work together. Boom, book comes out. They're like, man, he's pumping out books like crazy. He doesn't write them.
Right.
You know what I mean? But that guy who loves writing, who doesn't want to do that, that's them. That's their nirvana. They'll write
Yep.
all day long. So getting people and getting like with a mission around where it's like, hey, this is what I'm choosing to make my life about. And I want people to know, like wherever I'm at, they know I'm a family guy. They
Yep.
also know that I'm 52 cards short of a full deck, so I'll talk shit if I need to, like to be able to be there. I like weird sense of humor. I love sports. I love like movement and being able to be there, and I'm fine with that. Why? Because I'm fine with me.
Yep.
And because of that, it doesn't matter because we had a current issue where we had 1,500 customers on Zoom is one of the partners we had. Got kicked off November 20th. I'm flying. I'm going through, and all of a sudden I get 1,200 emails in the span of an hour. Then my messenger, phones, all this kind of stuff. I'm stuck in traffic. I can't go anywhere. Call up my team, say, hey, here's what's happening. Here's the resolution. I don't know the answer. I spend all of Thanksgiving and over the last couple of weeks just like doing nothing but building and working on that. And all I did was show up and communicate with people. People will share more negative things in private than they will in public, because they'll go ahead and you see the depths of people when things don't go their way and they throw a tantrum as adults, because we're just overgrown children. So they
Yeah.
start throwing tantrums, people calling me, they call me all kinds of names, all kinds of things to be there. And my wife is like, once she's the spicy one of us, so she wants to like go stab him, like she's got a prison shank ready. I'm like, get off the computer. Like, put your phone down. Don't go in there. Do not go in there. And she's like, they don't know what you're doing on the back end. And I said, that's okay.
Doesn't matter.
We're rewarded in public for the work we do in private. I've been
Mhm.
training, and the funny part is I was on a journey of accepting myself. So naturally, there's a test that comes. And
Sure.
so if I knew it. I made a declaration with my friends and people around. I was like, here's what I'm going to do over the next 12 to 18 months. And then so naturally everybody goes like, woo. And I'm thinking like, I've been training, because what I do know is that you train for the dark nights of the soul, not like waiting for them to come, but knowing that they will come, and
Mhm.
you'll be able to see where your training really is. And so most people, if you sent them 5 bad comments, they would fall apart. But you get roughly about 10,000 different comments of people combined over the course of a couple weeks talking about, you're not doing your job, you're not doing these things. And you got to ask yourself, I go back to Roadhouse, right? Where he asked me, like, what if he calls my mom a whore? Well, is she? Patrick Swayze. And so you
Yep.
got to look at the comments and ask yourself, is it true?
Yep.
No, it doesn't matter. It's just people being mad. And they're just being mad and they don't know what to do, because they haven't learned how to control their state and control their emotions to be through there. They haven't embraced. And I can't say that embrace your humanity if I don't embrace them and want to tear them down or delete their comments or do other things.
Yeah.
And I had to tell this to my team, because this is our first triumph. I'm like,
Yep.
no, let them stay. Let them go through that. Let them go through these different moments. Because guess what? I guarantee in 6 months from now, we'll have triple the amount of customers,
Right.
because they're going to see how we show up. They're going to see how we're communicating with them. They're going to see these different moments. And you know what? Maybe the process is broken right now. So it's an opportunity for us to lean in, listen to them, and build from there.
Yeah. That's excellent perspective.
Yeah.
I love what you're talking about about building silverbacks, because like
Yeah.
I mean that's what the tactical empire exists for, because I want a tribe of men. I'm building leaders, and
Yes.
like what it necessitates for me is that I
Mhm.
continue to level up in
Mhm.
every area and
Oh,
every
yeah.
aspect of what we teach and preach. So
Mhm.
like selfishly, if you want
Mhm.
transparency, like that group drives the shit out of me, because
Mhm.
there's incredibly successful
Yes.
people like yourself around there that I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, am I going to drink this beer today? I better not. There's like a lot of people watching me. I better stay
Yeah.
ripped. I better work
Yeah.
out. I better fucking do what I'm supposed to do. Take my
Yeah.
wife on date night, do all
Yeah.
this other stuff. And so I love that pressure.
Mhm.
And I really, really love that pressure. But
Mhm.
ultimately, I love the confidence that the group breeds in and of themselves. So they
Mhm.
go out and they make an impact in their family, first and foremost, and then
Mhm.
they impact their community. And
Yeah.
ultimately, that was the intention behind why I created it, because I think fucking we've just got a mess of society, and what it takes
Yeah.
is men to take back these
Mhm.
leadership roles and stop being passive, and
Yeah.
like you can't have a sloppy body, you can't be out of shape, you can't be incapable, and like I mean, I had a conversation with a guy the other day who had a 14-year-old kid, and he has
Mhm.
now lost like 80 pounds, and now the dad, and now his kid looks up to him. And I said he was at that window of opportunity where that kid was about to look for other role models.
Yes,
And
he
like, if
was.
you didn't lose that 80 fucking pounds, you wouldn't have been the hero in this story, because you'd have been the sloppy dad that he didn't trust for advice, because, and
Mhm.
then he would have went and found it somewhere else in the streets. I mean,
I 100. It's true. I'm not gonna disagree with you. Like,
and
I
so,
had the opportunity to sit on a plane to Denver one of those days, and the guy that I sat next to was one of those. Normally, I'm headphones in, I'm falling asleep because I can't even stay awake on a plane. Like, it's a superpower of mine. I can sleep the entire flight. But this is
it's
one
the
of those days
military.
where I was calling to me where I was like, "Oh, stay awake." The guy was in the cabinet for Clinton, both Bushes, and he was
Okay.
mainly in like I think it was like I don't know what it was. It was something community development that he happened to be in. He was in the cabinet, And one of the things he said is that every underprivileged kid is one relationship away from a fundamentally different life. Every
Yeah.
single, he said that was the key pillar that happened to be there, was one key mentor in life. And so there's nothing more powerful than that mentor being your dad,
Yeah.
and seeing and letting your dad being your superhero. It doesn't matter if they're blood dad, stepdad, dad you saw down the street,
Neighbor's dad. Yeah,
neighbor,
exactly.
like it doesn't matter. It's just you see, like, people want to be led. At the end of the
Yep.
day, people want to be led. And people can get into all kind of segments of whatever they want to do, but people want to be led.
Yep.
And you need to take ownership of that capability if that's how you're wired. My friends know I'm like, stop being a bitch. Like, just it's okay. Like, it's okay. I will call you
Sure.
and I will give you that, because at the other piece, let's think of the other key thing that you've done is accountability.
Yeah. But that's
Doesn't matter.
love. That's real love.
That doesn't matter what level of business you're at. Every individual on this planet wants accountability.
Yep.
Because if you're at 7, you want to get to 8, you want to 8, get to 9, 9 to 10. It all comes down to accountability. There's a reason why big companies have boards. You can
Yeah.
call it a political, but that CEO has to report to the board.
Yep.
He has to go to them, and it can't just be like, what are we going to do this year? I don't fucking know. Shit, let's just not do anything. He's gone.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, you got
Exactly.
shareholders. They don't care. So it depends on what you want. So if you can build and foster, if I had to give anybody any piece of advice, no matter what they're doing, and if they're looking to create a business or whatever's going on, make sure you have accountability and you have a mentor. And a mentor is different than a coach. A
Yep.
coach asks questions for you to come up with the answers. So coaching's good in certain elements, as if you're looking to define your voice and different things. A mentor can guide you down the street and tell you where the speed bumps are. So if you can have that person in your life that is a mentor in that category, they can tell you the speed bumps, they have relational activity about it, and then it becomes very, very powerful.
That's awesome. That's great, man. Well, Sylvania, I could sit here and talk to you for the next 4 hours, but we
Yeah.
don't do Joe Rogan length
Yeah.
podcasts in here
Yeah.
generally, but I really appreciate your time, man. And like, you and I are so energetically aligned. I mean, this
Yeah.
has just been an amazing conversation and opportunity, and I definitely want to make it happen more frequently. So I would love to talk to you more, obviously offline or whatever,
Yeah.
and we can
Definitely.
continue to connect. But thank you so much for your time. But how can people find you?
Very simply, you can find me the two main platforms that I'm really diving into right now. First one being Instagram. It's at Sylvania Harrod. So Sylvania, like Pennsylvania without the pen, last name Harrod, Harrod. You can find me on there. Do not watch my stories if you do not like really childish and having fun and enjoying that life. I'm looking to create content every single time I go into my gym, is the commitment I've made. Just answering people's questions. So the other place you can find me is on Facebook. It's the same thing. Yes, I probably will send you 219 reels. It's all good. If I get in the mode, I'm like, yeah, look at this, be able to be there. But you can find me there. And so those are the two easiest places. You can DM me. I am a real human. I do respond. I do not let my team manage any of my social media, because I'm in a phase where I want it to be real. I want it to be human.
Yep.
I've worked with different agencies in the past, and all they did is give you a bunch of bots and fake people. So I want to engage and go through that.
Yep. Yep. I'm the same way. I only let them do my reels, and then
Yeah,
I do all the comments and everything else. I think that that's how you should do it. So
exactly. Gary Vee taught me that model, man. He's great.
yeah.
Like people are like, why are you getting a Twitter battle with that person? Like, he just likes, like, that's just him, you know? Like we know that it's real if he responds to something, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, man, I appreciate your time. We'll drop all your information in the show notes
Yep.
and get people connected with you. Guys, I hope this has been as beneficial to you as it has to me. This guy is brilliant and dropped a ton of knowledge on us today. Thank you, man. Have a wonderful week, and I appreciate you.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you too.